Hey there. Welcome to Storytime Live. I'm Dr. Jennifer Bird. I am a biblical scholar, and I like to do this little Storytime Live thing where I'm reading biblical passages through the lens of what they say about sex, the relationship we call marriage, and when they include events that have to do with physical harm involving intimate body parts. So I'm doing all of that because I'm interested in those topics, and those are the topics I'm talking about in my current book, or my most recent book, Marriage in the Bible. What do the texts say? So we will be talking about the book of Proverbs today, predominantly in light of the way wisdom and folly, or the strange woman, or whatever you've known her to be called, why are they sexualized? That's what we'll talk about. So hang tight and we'll get to that. So let me do my first quick plug in terms of scholarship. This is a scholar who doesn't get, gosh, I have new technology again. I'm very excited about it, and I'm still figuring out the best placement for everything. So bear with me. Gail Street doesn't get a whole lot of attention, and nowhere near what I think she should be getting as a biblical scholar, as a feminist, critical biblical scholar. She wrote this book, The Strange Woman: Power and Sex in the Bible, and it's a compilation of essays, basically addressing various parts of both testaments of the Christian, the primary two Christian. There are two primary testaments of the Christian Bible: adultery and other sex crimes, women on the boundary, sex and subversion, jealous husband and wayward wife. I'm pretty sure that's about Deuteronomy 5. Let's see. The passage where a man can have his, no, it's actually, Numbers 25, that horrific, infamous passage, but she's talking about more than just that passage. The whore and the holy one, mirror images of wisdom. That's definitely pertaining to what we're talking about today. Spirituality and sexuality in the body of Christ. Notice how those two categories, if you will, are typically set as like opposites, so that this concept of sex is never considered holy. So you have spirituality, and then there's physicality and sexuality, as if sexuality cannot itself be holy. And I remember the first time someone asked me if it could be, and I didn't know how to respond, because I thought, well, of course not, because it's sex. It can't be holy. I'm like, oh my gosh, what if people considered sex holy instead, right? Those who come from these kinds of traditions. What if people were encouraged to think about this most delightful human experience as holy? How might that change conversations? Sinners, adulteresses, whores, and brides, imagining women in the Gospels and Revelation. I think you can see where all of that is going. And confounding the wisdom of the wise, which also pertains to the book of Proverbs. Well, actually, she's also talking about 1 Corinthians, when Paul talks about foolishness and wisdom in his letters to the Corinthians. So I wanted to bring this woman's work to your attention. If you didn't already know about Gail Street, she has retired. I believe. I remember the last time I saw her at the annual conferences, and that was many years ago, because I haven't been able to attend regularly. But Power and Sex in the Bible, I imagine this will appeal to many of you, and she is definitely writing an academic kind of essay, but it is also accessible. So it's not specifically for a general audience. So I think it'll actually meet a lot of people who watch my channel. I think it'll actually be something that you all would enjoy, and it's not something that would ever show up on a New York Times bestseller, but it's really great content that you would probably benefit from and enjoy reading. So, Gail Street. Today's endorsement. So I also can't help it. I also just got this book. I'm so excited to read it. Ejaculate Responsibly, a whole new way to think about abortion. And I am a big fan of that because it is not talked about in any way that is helpful for the most part in our general culture. We have people who are trying to like make sure it's possible for women and they are just kind of sidelined, right? Or thought to be crazy or whatever. And then you've got everybody else talking about it through a, putting the fetus first. And it just drives me bleeping crazy. What I love about her is how she's just level-headed, right? I haven't had a chance to read it, but I did see, I mean, how do you not love this, right? How do you not love a woman who's going to put that in her book? Pregnancy should not be a punishment. There are all kinds of things. That's not my main thing. My main thing is about the fact that men, a woman can't walk out on a pregnancy, right? There's that. My main thing is what hooked me and convinced me to buy the book is this data point that she shines a light on, which is men are fertile 365 days a year, if one is fertile, and women are fertile 12. It just puts everything in a whole different perspective, doesn't it? So we need to shift our focus on men. I think that's true, and I think people are getting that message, but it's, men cause all unwanted pregnancies. I mean, this is true. I'm sorry. If you guys want some power back, if you think that women have taken some power from you, you can have this one back. You can claim this. You do cause them. And women, oh, good God, yes. I mean, how many times does a woman have sex with very little pleasure, or maybe none at all? So yeah, all kinds of, we don't mind if women suffer as long as it makes things easier for men. I mean, there's so many comments in here. This is just great stuff. But anyway, I liked that vasectomy are less risky than tubal ligations, but how many couples have the woman go in for that instead of the man? So fun, right? Society clings to the idea that men hate condoms. I imagine that might be true, but there's some other pieces. Birth control for men is easy to access. And so these are her like big points, and then she's talking about it in between. Right? Like, yeah. And sometimes it's physically painful, right? Ovulation is involuntary. Ejaculation is not, I like reframers. I think those are women's fertility is unpredictable. Men's is not. Sperm live up to 5 days. I mean, so putting the number from 12 to 3, 50 times. That's what we're talking about. I just blurbed her entire book for you. There you go. Those are her points. I'm looking forward to reading it. So, I imagine. Okay, so here we are. I am going to get into the reading now. I hope you've enjoyed that quick little endorsement of 2 different books here. So today's story time, we're talking about Proverbs, and that's part of why I felt okay to do this is because of the issue of what's happening in the book of Proverbs when it comes to wisdom, and this woman who is the strange woman is one of the translations of this one, her counterpart, wisdom and folly, wisdom and might be kind of fun to pull up. Maybe I should have. I didn't think to do that ahead of time. Let's see if I can do this quickly on Bible Gateway. Let's see. Let's do Bible Gateway. And then what's a good verse that uses wisdom has built her house, yada, yada. The wise, foolish woman is loud. Let's try 9:13. Proverbs 9:13. And then Proverbs in all English translations. Okay, so let's. Oh, that's kind of fun. So that's the main thing. That's the main thing I want to talk about is this thing about wisdom and folly, her counterpart. We can talk about why they're women to begin with, and that's because the nouns are feminine. They're feminine Hebrew nouns. I don't know. Is this better? Can you hear me better now? Maybe. Um, um, the comments are cracking me up. I'm enjoying I'm enjoying the comments today so far. So thank you folks for being here, who are able to be here, who want to be and are able to be here live. I always, always, always appreciate you. And by the way, there was one time a few weeks ago, I specifically went over to Facebook and said, gosh, I'm so grateful for the people who show up live because I was in a serious funk and you all, and the people who showed up live to chat with me were just pulled me out of it. So wanted to make sure you all knew that. I don't know that you would see any of my Facebook posts. I don't necessarily expect that you also follow me anywhere else. So I wanted you all to know that I had said that. And in particular, I think James Apperson was here that day and maybe Carrie Ann, I'm not sure, but there were people who showed up and helped me kind of through a moment. So I'm going to read passages of Proverbs today, but I also want to do this since let's just jump into this up front since my colleague chose the strange translation, right? The strange woman, which is, I believe, the the footnotes. Most recent translations will suggest strange, but let's do a little share here. Let's do a quick little. I'm gonna share the passage. So I went over to Proverbs 9:13, which is one of the many passages that has this woman foolish, the counter to woman wisdom, right? And so there should be about 50 different translations here. So a foolish woman, the foolish woman is clamorous. A foolish woman, well, this isn't very exciting. Folly, a foolish woman is a rowdy woman. These are interesting, actually, that it's not, hi. Clamorous is restless and noisy. She's naive and easily misled and thoughtless, knows nothing of eternal value, because that's what we need is eternal value right now. Not that someone writing the Proverbs would have had eternity in mind, by the way. A foolish woman, I guess she's getting foolish here for the most part. Woman folly. I find that interesting, that woman folly. So we have to counter woman wisdom, which is how it's often translated in the book of Proverbs. The foolish woman is coarse. Now, see, this is so interesting too. A foolish woman, the foolish woman, woman wisdom, and woman folly. So some of them are just referring to women in general, right? Who might be wise or who are foolish or are declared foolish. And some are making it clear that, at least in the context of Proverbs, they are personifying a concept or a value or a negative value. So this is more, I think this is more respectful of the text to say woman folly, right? Stupidity is reckless. So this is, again, I think that's more respectful of the Hebrew Bible and the Hebrew context to say these are embodied concepts, right? Just like you have the 9 muses or the 10 or 12 virtues, the muses for the Greeks, and then they also had the intellectual virtues. But see, the foolish woman, and isn't that interesting? But they're all going with fool, a foolish woman. That's interesting. A prostitute, oh, that's fun. The Living Bible, a prostitute is loud and brash and never has enough. Oh, very interesting. The Message, we love the Message sometimes because I like to see what he does with it. Oh my word, look at that. Then there's this other woman, Madam Prostitute, brazen, empty-headed, frivolous. She sits out on the front porch of her house on Main Street, and as people walk by minding their own business, calls out, "Are you confused about life? Don't know what's going on? Steal off with me. I'll show you a good time. No one will ever know, and I'll give you the time of your life." I don't know why I just made that kind of Southern, but anyway. But they don't know about all the skeletons in her closet that all her guests end up in hell. Right, so every single John who has visited a woman or female who has visited a female prostitute ends up in hell. It's very interesting. I wonder if there's a different I wonder if I should have come to a different verse, instead of 9:13. That would have been a better example, but look at the trees. I am so with you. That's part of my point. I see it that way as well. That's why I tried to um, play with that idea when someone does that, and I should be more clear when I make some sort of commentary because not everybody knows all of my thoughts or all the things I've said in the past. So thank you for being here, and I fully agree with you. Sex work is real work, and it is work that some people don't mind choosing, and some people just do because they can, and it's a way for them to pay the bills, feed their family, put themselves through school, whatever. Lots of different options there. Some people. Oh. Oh dear, how did that happen? Can you all still hear me? Yeah, you can. Okay. Huh. All right. I don't know why we lost connection, so I'm gonna back out and come back in. Let's see what happens. I'll just start the camera. Okay. All right. Sorry about that. Okay. Just keeping it lively. Yeah, I do see sex work is not something that I ever personally denigrate. I think it's complicated, and I know that there are people who are forced into it beyond their will and ability to get out of, and I do consider that abusive and a form of slavery. I also know people who choose it for themselves, and maybe they'd rather have a different job, but it's pays better than others they could find. There are all kinds of reasons and issues in that whole realm, but so I just appreciate you saying that, and I fully agree with you. Yeah. Which one? Which line of thinking? Sorry, I'm a little behind because I've just been so distracted. The line of thinking that, right, that well, the Bible embodies, the Bible puts out there about sex workers for sure has led to, yes, serial killers treating sex workers this way. Dehumanizing. It's dehumanizing, and anytime you dehumanize a group of people, it somehow justifies someone treating them as less than human in the way that they talk about and treat all those things. So yes, thank you. I wasn't saying those things, so thank you for saying it, making it very clear. This is not a place that is. This is a place that is safe for a sex worker to show up and have a conversation. So I need to be a little bit better about that, I think, today. So let me just kind of back it up here. I care that these ancient texts choose to sexualize these two people. And because of the way that sex is thought of from their perspective, right? So from a biblical standpoint, men perform sex, right, on a woman or on a inferior person or person they consider inferior to themselves. So, sex, biblically speaking, is a thing men do. And in fact, there are still some people who think of sex that way, that the man is active and the woman is passive. Excuse me. The people who think about sex in a hetero partner framework only, or who think of men as the active person. Therefore, if a man is with another man, how does that work? One man has to be treated like a woman, right? That's one of the many reasons, I guess, that some people are negative about male sexual activity and relationships. This idea that a man is supposed to be active, penetrating, and a woman, very hetero, is supposed to be receptive and passive, which is just so silly, right? Why is it that the woman has to be just that's just not fun. That just isn't that is not very enjoyable. I've had someone treat me that way in a sexual encounter, and it was actually when I was able to separate myself from what was happening because I realized it wasn't about me. And it was actually just awful to be treated as an object. Like, why does that seem why would someone want to do that to another person, you know? Yeah, so, I'm interested in this issue, right? Why is knowledge, why is wisdom she's being called a woman because the noun, right? Chokhmah is a feminine noun. And then so is the counter, actually. It's a feminine noun. So let's look at some of these. I'm going to do the story time thing for a little bit. I feel like I need to come back over here and check in because that was I want to make sure everybody knows that I'm not anti-sex work and I'm gonna put you on the screen. I hope you don't mind. I'm just trying to read it. In my opinion, the greatest sin of Abrahamic religions is the fact they got rid of the feminine divine. As much as previous civilizations were still patriarchal, at least there was a place sometimes prominent for women. Is the next comment there? Yeah. I think that there are plenty of people who think this, in particular those who are doing sex work would certainly help. If it could be legalized, we would certainly treat it differently, I think. Anyway, I had a colleague, I think I'm fairly certain I've referenced this before, but I had a colleague who did her dissertation on sex work in the Bible, and the book might actually be behind me on the shelf. She read passages in the Bible that talk about sex workers with a group of sex workers who were working in San Francisco, which is where she was in school at the time. And it changed things for me dramatically. That was early in my graduate studies or whatever. It was still in graduate studies. And she came to a conference and brought one of the women, trans female sex worker, with her who had chosen to do sex work and really enjoyed that 80% of the time what she was doing was comforting people and doing much more sensual work and listening and being a presence for people who were lonely. So I think it is complicated. It is complex, but I know that most people have just a negative, think of it in the realm of taboo, awful, negative, bad, and I very much wish that could change for people seeing it differently. Okay. Treat others as object. Yeah. Okay. So I hope I look at the trees. I didn't think. Okay, good. Thank you. I see your comment. I appreciate that. All right. So let's get into, yes, and again, I appreciate what you did say. Let's get into reading some of Proverbs, make it story time a little bit first, and then spend some more time talking about these two concepts that are embodied as women. So I do want to start at the beginning. I'm not going to read everything in Proverbs. I am going to read the beginning and a couple chapters at the beginning, and then let's also do the whole Proverbs 31 woman while we're here. Might as well, right? Sorry, I am scattered today. Just trying to get caught up here. Okay, the Proverbs of King Solomon, son of David, king of Israel. For learning about wisdom and instruction, for learning words of insight, for gaining instruction in wise dealing, righteousness, justice, and equity, to teach shrewdness to the simple, knowledge and prudence to the young. Let the wise also hear and gain in learning, and the discerning acquire skill. To understand a proverb and a figure, the words of the wise and their riddles. This is all intro to this idea, which I know many of us who grew up in a Christian tradition are familiar with this. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. So I did spend some time looking at the term there being used in the Hebrew. And it is about fear and terror, fear. And then there's an entry in the what's called the BDB, the Brown Drives Briggs, I think it is, the three men who put together this dictionary, and initially the Hebrew Bible dictionary, basically. And they have an entry that is specifically about the reverence for God. And the rest is fear, just fear. And so I want to point out that I think that toning it down by saying this is about awe and reverence, I think that does people a huge disservice because of the way it's used so casually. Also used in places where violence is happening, and this fear of the Lord is supposed to protect you, or be, if you're on the Lord's side, the fear of the Lord is what gets you into a good relationship with the Lord. And so this, for me, is where some of the very basic kind of the foundation is laid for any faith community that does have what I see as an abusive framework, which is when you are telling people to fear a God or a leader, either one, that you are also supposed to love. So when you're supposed to fear the Lord and also love the Lord, and people of faith have been trying for centuries to make those both work, no wonder so many people misunderstand an abusive relationship when it happens right in front of them, when they are smack dab in the middle of it. They've been taught to fear this male being who is bigger and stronger and more whatever than them, but will provide everything for you as long as you love them and fear them, right? And so no wonder many, many females, but not only females, but predominantly so, have been in, and Christian females have been in abusive relationships because this model of fearing and loving this male God is so plain and obvious. And that is what I ended up talking about for my dissertation. If you're interested in that, it's published in a New Testament library series by T&T Clark, the title of which is Fear. Oh my gosh, that's hilarious that I don't remember the title of my own book. Fear, obedience, abuse, power, and fear, and fearful obedience. Reconsidering First Peter's commands to wives. So APFO, yeah, abuse, power, and fearful obedience. That is what's being commanded of women in various parts of the Bible for their relationship to men. And in particular, when the dynamic is abusive, people are taught to endure it for various reasons. So I pause because the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge sounds like a good thing. Or I think within the framework of the book of Proverbs, it is set up as a positive thing. And I just do not think that it is. It's also concerning to me because this is a book that is written as if it is for children, specifically boys, because a hetero framework is assumed and the language is being directed to a boy. For instance, in verse 8 of the version I'm reading, it says, "Hear my child, your father's instruction." Well, the Hebrew says, "Hear my son." It's not a gender inclusive word in the Hebrew. And I think that's that when you say my child, it does hide the patriarchal norms and the male centered elements of the Bible when you just try to make it inclusive. I'm just not a fan of doing that because it keeps us from seeing all the ways that it's also at the same time very problematic. So that's my thing. I would like translations to be more honest instead of inclusive when the language itself is not inclusive. So, this is being written for or is kind of framed as instructions for children. And so children are growing up with this framework of fearing the Lord as they fear their own parents, perhaps. And, yeah, okay, that's not the main point of today, but I needed to talk about it since it's in here, right? So do we need to say anything more about this fear of the Lord? The beginning of knowledge, fools despise wisdom and instruction. The other thing about that, so that I just for now to comment on, is when we have dualistic content, dualistic teaching and content, that is appropriate for children. The problem is there isn't any more nuanced or mature content for adults. So that adults have to turn to is this dualistic stuff that is crap once you become a real adult. I'm sorry. I'm really unsettled by how much of the content of the Christian Bible, the primary two testaments of the Christian Bible, is dualistic in nature. A lot of Paul's language is dualistic. Much of what I think some of what Jesus says certainly is, but there's not as much of that. It is through and through in Paul's commands and the way he objectifies people and defines people by one element of who a person is, right? So it's not just dualistic, it's also essentialist. Those two things, dualistic language and essentialist language, very problematic as far as I'm concerned. And yet the Bible is full of it. And so that is another one of the reasons why it is really unsettling to me as a collection that adults have been reading for millennia, right? The language that's appropriate for children, okay, that's one thing, but yeah, okay, I think I've made my point and then some, okay. So then we move on to, sorry, I'm reading the comments. Oh, look, Daryl's back. Yay. That is just, yes, that's my problem. That's one of my problems. And then that's, yeah. Okay. Sounds like a bully. All of these comments, right? All right. Bibles are crap. I think that's interesting. Not just going to let it speak for itself. Okay. Hear my son is what it says. Still in chapter 1. Hear my son, your father's instruction, and do not reject your mother's teaching. Let us celebrate here, right? It is appropriate to celebrate that the mother and the father are both held up at times. And there's an element of putting them both and pairing them with and there's an element of respecting the woman in this couple, which I need to acknowledge, right? I need to acknowledge that is there, right? It's not always a positive in my mind, but it is there. And there are some times that women are put on a equal footing with the man that she's, paired up with here. So here the instruction and teaching, they are fair, a fair garland for your head and pendants for your neck. My son, if sinners entice you, right? Just that, right? If sinners, who is entirely that, right? Nobody. It just drives me crazy, right? If sinners entice you, do not consent, right? If they say, come with us, let us lie in wait for blood, let us wantonly ambush the innocent. Who actually says that? Like, who actually behaves that way? You know what I mean? Okay. Throw in your lot among us. We will all have one purse. My son, do not walk in their way. Do not keep your foot from their paths, for their feet run to evil and they hurry to shed blood. First of all, people that maybe you want to reconsider hanging out with are not typically that obvious in terms of their influence that could be negative. I'm just saying. And so then that it turns people, gosh, I was just looking at, I'm teaching 2 classes right now. One is world religions, and the final week of the term, we were doing best we could come up with alternative, um, examples because the predominant ones, the monotheistic, and then you get to and you have to start with Hindu and Buddhism and Taoism and Confucianism, and then you talk about the monotheistics, and then you got then there's all these interesting ones, like Baha'i, and then there's like, oh, what about Wicca and forms of pagan traditions, and what about let's talk about Scientology. So like I asked my students, what would you say to someone who thinks of Wiccans as, negative and evil and out to undermine monotheistic traditions, or specifically Christianity, which is the one that predominantly I've encountered as having a very hard time with Wiccans. And just lost my train of thought. Isn't that funny the way that happens? Did somebody say something that, no? Oh, well, so anyway, I was really heartened. I was deeply heartened by the way the students who chose to engage that topic. What would you say to someone? Because it's about, if you take a course like this, you need to be able to take the content with you somehow, right? Show me that you've actually learned something, not just you've done the reading. So they all came up with really lovely ways of talking about it. But some were saying, this is what got me onto it. So, a couple were talking about this issue of stereotyping, right? And that it's these stereotypes that people then cling to that then lead to fear and instill fear, and people build on that, right? And instead of understanding someone or a person or tradition that's different from themselves. And, of course, a couple others, just for the record, did also comment on how Wiccans have been targeted and never retaliated. Traditions predate Christian ideas. Many Christian ideas were incorporated, or many pagan ideas were incorporated into Christianity as a way to undermine it, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, this idea of stereotyping and how that leads to fear and then plants a seed that somehow justifies being afraid of and spinning out fear instead of seeking to understand. That's why I use that language of understanding as often as I can. All right, I need to fix this light because it's going to get worse. Hang on a second. Okay, thanks for bearing with me today. So ridiculous, huh? Okay. We're going to take this back down. We'll get a different book next time. Okay. So, yeah, fear of what we don't understand. Okay, so we have this really interesting content. And what I am going to look up to make sure I haven't missed something important. My kids critically analyzed Numbers 5 jealousy test one summer to keep up writing skills. Oh my God, I love that. Karen Amer, thank you. Numbers 25, I think you mean. But yeah, I think we all know what you're talking about. It was referred to. I referred to it in this book. If you're just joining us, I did a quick scholar plug today. The scholar for today is Gail Street, and her book is The Strange Woman: Power and Sex in the Bible. And her, in particular, The Strange Woman, the title comes from the foolish woman who is paired with wisdom here, and is sometimes called the strange woman. The translation of foolish there is sometimes strange. And let's go find. So let me go find that one. So I will in a second. We have all kinds of content, which is interesting, talking about how wisdom, my child, if you accept my words and treasure up my commandments within you, making your ear attentive to wisdom. So I'm at the beginning of chapter 2 now, and inclining your heart to understanding. If you indeed cry out for insight and raise your voice for understanding, if you seek it like silver and search for it as for hidden treasures. So far, I'm actually kind of a fan of this, right? If you seek this, if you seek understanding and wisdom, I think that's ultimately a really good thing personally. But then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. That's where I draw the line. And I think it's a very powerful thing to say to a child, because children tend to be quite osmotic. Is that a word? They soak things up. right? And they, in particular, if it's a parent that they or an adult that they respect, they will take it to heart. Most children will take these things to heart. And so, anyway, for the Lord gives wisdom. How about there is wisdom in the world that you are able to seek out and understand? Every time the scriptures of the Christian tradition, because I read them both, talk about God and something that you need as being external to yourself, that God has to dispense to you. I could encourage you to just raise a flag at that and say that that's a bunch of bull. I have found that to be disempowering in the past. It was for me and for many people I know. And so I call that out to say that I like the ideas, and I can't pronounce her name. I've not memorized her name. Nishogi. Does anybody know this? The woman who talks about I found God within myself, and she was beautiful. Does anybody know who I'm talking about? Anyway, so I encourage people to think about, if you want to use the concept of God, sure, I think there's a way to reframe God. I'm very interested in doing that, actually, or redefining God, but that is already within you or is accessible from who you are, as compared to being external to who we are as humans, then something that we have to tap into. I find that unnecessarily disempowering. So all this stuff about wisdom, you will understand righteousness and justice and equity, every good path. I think there's truth in this. Here's the thing, folks, right? I think that when you seek out understanding and wisdom, right, what that means is you're listening to lots of different voices, and you're trying to understand other people's experiences in the world. And right, I think that part holds truth for me. And then there's this other piece of the dualism in the way it's presented that is really unsettling for me. So it's just very difficult. So the first reference to the loose woman or strange is in verse 16 of chapter 2. You will be saved from the loose woman, from the adulteress with her smooth words, who forsakes the partner of her youth and forgets her sacred covenant. For her way leads down to death, or her house leads down to death, and her paths to the shades. Those who go to her never come back, nor do they regain the paths of life. There are many things to say about what was just described that can make a lot of sense to me, as a move of a woman being autonomous. So, for instance, she forsakes the partner of her youth and forgets her sacred covenant. Yeah, well, if that partner has been abusive and is I'm trying not to swear on this channel, even though I have all these names running through my head. Yeah, if her partner is treating her badly, good for her for walking out on the partner of her youth, and for forgetting her sacred covenant, for saying F you to a sacred covenant that would force her to stay within that. No, I'm down with a woman saying, I'm not going to put up with that. For her way leads down to death and her paths to the shades. This is really about religious ideas as much as it is about trying to scare people from spending time with the wrong people, right? Trying to scare children away from spending time with the wrong people. So there may be people that you would like your children not to spend time with, right? I'm not denying that. But when you say something as all encompassing as her way leads down to death, that to me is as much about denigrating other religious traditions as it is about someone who makes choices that might not be healthy for the long term, right? Those who go near her never come back, nor do they regain the paths of life. I mean, that You could go talk to people in addiction centers who are working with people who are getting their lives back, and they would give you a big FU to that, right? Like, people are strong, people are resilient, humans are much more impressive than that. Um, so don't sell people out like that. Anyway, so this is how I have to react to reading the book of Proverbs, right? I just needed you to see it and hear it because this language is tricky. I think sometimes, especially because I grew up reading it and accepting it, it can sound really smooth and it can be easy to agree with if you grew up with it. And so it's important to find ways to see what's actually being said and in ways in which it's actually harmful to people, at least for me. That's what's important to me to do. So continuing on in chapter 2, therefore walk in the way of the good and keep to the paths of the just. I think that's a good idea, right? Hang out with just people. Hang out with people who listen and learn and seek wisdom and understanding, right? I'm okay with all of that. For the upright will abide in the land, and the innocent will remain in it. And that need to challenge as much as I'd like it to be true. Like, the upright will abide in the land. Do they, though? Like, there are people out there who are undermining justice. So it's not that simple. It's like saying, trust in God and things will go well, right? I have a problem with that. Life isn't that simple or pretty or easy. We wouldn't need social justice warriors if this were so simple and true, right? Okay, I'm getting worked up. The wicked will be cut off from the land, and their treacherous will be rooted out of it. I mean, again, that's not really true. That isn't true. This is where the book of Ecclesiastes comes in, I think, actually, is to counter some of this ridiculous Pollyanna content. Okay, so we have woman wisdom. The Lord by wisdom founded the earth. What? There are multiple creation stories or slivers of creation stories throughout the Bible. This is one of them that I find really interesting. Wisdom, right? I'm in chapter 3. Happy are those who find wisdom and those who get understanding, for her income is better than silver, her revenue better than gold. She is more precious than jewels. So, she is being talked about in such a way that you are to seek wisdom, prize her highly, honor her. All this language about trying to find where it's very clear. Let's see. It goes back and forth, right, in the first few chapters. So chapter 5, my child, be attentive to my wisdom, incline your ear to my understanding, so that you may hold on to prudence and your lips may guard knowledge. For the lips of a loose woman, strange woman, same thing, drip honey, and her speech is smoother than oil. But in the end, she is bitter as wormwood, sharp as two-edged sword. Her feet go down to death. Her steps follow the path to Sheol. She does not keep straight to the path of life. Her ways wander. She does not know it. I find that also interesting. In the end, she is bitter as wormwood and sharp as a two-edged sword. For those of you who know scripture well, like Christian scriptures well, anyone else know what the other reference to sharp two-edged sword? That's what the Lamb of God is described having coming out of his mouth, Jesus, the Lamb of God, a two-edged sword, which is the truth. The word of God is actually a two-edged sword. That's really fun. Okay, I'm going to keep going. All right, I'm going to read this one passage about wisdom and the creation story that I ask my students in online classes, or my students in classes, intro to the Hebrew Bible, Old Testament. Let's see. It is here in chapter 8, I believe. But I want to make sure that my earlier point about what concerns me about this has been clear. Wisdom is embodied as a woman. The noun is feminine, and wisdom, is talked about as woman wisdom, or just wisdom in general. Let's see. Say to wisdom, you are my sister, and call insight your intimate friend. They that keep you from the loose woman, that they may keep you from the loose woman, from the adulteress with her smooth words, right? So both women, in a sense, are being sexualized. In particular, the strange or loose woman is, but they're both wisdom and folly are set up in a hetero framework for male children, right? And they're being taught to desire wisdom and to not be seduced by folly or the loose woman. And what does it do that we're putting a sexual framework on folly, right? What does it do that this woman is turned into a prostitute in this framework? I wanted to find one of the other passages because this is not okay. Strange. Where's that? That is up here. A loose woman drips honey. Okay. Proverbs 5:3. I just want to do one more quick comparison to see what's going on here. Proverbs 5:3. Proverbs. And then we'll 5:3 in all English. Aha. Right. So this is actually more interesting than the other one, fool, the one that was saying foolish. So two different types of women, or two different types of concepts being embodied by women. So this is Proverbs chapter 5, verse 3. The lips of a strange woman. In the NRSV, it says the lips of a loose woman drip honey. And her speech is smoother than oil. So King James of the 21st century, for the lips of a strange woman drip as honeycomb, her mouth is smoother than oil. That's a very interesting thing to say. Okay. Lips of a strange woman, immoral woman, right? Loose, strange, forbidden, the forbidden woman, right? Lips of a mysterious woman. Oh, that's interesting. For the lips of a woman who is a stranger. Now that's a group of people who don't even understand what, like, her mouth is smoother than oil. That makes me wonder if they're absolutely onto something, or they're just they don't even understand the Hebrew they're reading. I don't know, because haven't done the etymology of this word and looked at its usage, but that is a very interesting change, different translation, right? But it does get at what were they trying to say when they talked about this strange woman? Is this Darby? No, Darby. What is Drake? I think it's Drake. The lips of a harlot. Let's just go for it. Let's just another man's woman. Oh, that's interesting. And we should just remind you that I think that there shouldn't be, in either testament of the primary testaments of the Christian Bible, I don't think we should ever see wife or husband. I think that should always say man and woman, because that's what it is in the Hebrew and the Greek. Oh, here we go. The words of an adulteress. Oh, that's fun. She promises something as sweet as honey. So, forbidden women, adulteress, immoral, loose, strange. Yeah. Okay, lips of a loose woman. They didn't change it to strange. That's interesting. All right. Just kind of a curiosity there. Why does it need to be sexualized, right? Why does it help? I think why it helps and why it's happening is not the question, right? I think the question I should be asking is, are you aware that that's what's happening, that we're sexualizing wisdom and folly, and that the Proverbs are set up primarily to talk to young boys, and assuming a hetero framework for all these boys. So that's in there. The other thing I wanted to do, and then we'll go look at the Proverbs 31 passage real quick, is in chapter 8 of Proverbs. We do have what I kind of make a big deal of it in my Intro to Hebrew Bible. Maybe I shouldn't. I'm not sure. But when I look at the use of chokhmah, which is wisdom here, and chokhmah's wisdom's role in the creation as claimed here in chapter 8 of Proverbs, and then you put it next to, or you kind of read it with John, the opening verses of chapter 1 of John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was moving toward God, and the Word was God. Those are all Greek ideas, this concept of the Logos moving toward God. So as things move closer to God, they become more God-like. It's a very, actually, Greek Orthodox idea, which is because it comes out of the Greek concepts, right? And is adopted to talk about Jesus. But this idea of the Logos, the Word, the ideas, those were used to create the world, is much more popular in Christian thought than what we see here in Proverbs 8, which is wisdom is the partner to God in creation. And I've had some STEM related students say this one actually makes more sense to me than the Word in John, which I thought was lovely. So I'm going to read it, and I am just going to leave that up to you, and then we'll move on. So this is in chapter 8, starts out, does not wisdom call, and does not understanding raise her voice? On the heights beside the way, at the crossroads, she takes her stand. Beside the gates in front of the town, at the entrance of the portals, she cries out. So it's like she's a virtuous whore instead of a whore soliciting sex, but it's in seducing you intellectually for good or whatever. And again, I'm saying this in reference to the way they're talking about it. And I think this is worth thinking about, right? To you, O people, I call, and my cry is to all that live. O simple ones, learn prudence, acquire intelligence, you who lack it. Hear, for I will speak noble things, and from my lips will come what is right. For my mouth will utter truth. Wickedness is an abomination to my lips. All the words of my mouth are righteous. There is nothing twisted or crooked in them. They are all straight to one who understands, and right to those who find knowledge. And so this is woman wisdom speaking to people. Take my instruction instead of silver, and knowledge rather than choice gold. Where they're reworking the same ideas over and over and over again in these first 8 or 9 chapters. For wisdom is better than jewels, and all that you may desire cannot compare with her. I, wisdom, live with prudence. The Hebrew there is uncertain. And I attain knowledge and discretion. And here we go. The fear of the Lord is hatred of evil. So knowledge is being equated with the fear of the Lord, and that is hatred of evil. I'd rather them just say the appreciation of wisdom is that you will hate evil, but they can't help themselves. They have to join the fear of the Lord to it. They cannot help themselves. And I just pride and arrogance and the way of evil and perverted speech I hate. This is still woman wisdom speaking. I have good advice and sound wisdom. I have insight. I have strength. By me, kings reign, and rulers decree what is just. By me, rulers rule, and nobles, all who govern rightly. I love those who love me. This is still wisdom talking, right? And those who seek me diligently find me. Riches and honor are with me. Enduring wealth and prosperity. Again, this is to be debated, okay? I think that's a little Pollyanna again, but my fruit is better than gold, even fine gold, and my yield than choice silver. I walk in the way of righteousness along the paths of justice, endowing with wealth those who love me and filling their treasuries. We could turn that into metaphorical wealth, perhaps, and saying, anyway, because I just need to be clear about that. But here we go. Here's the creation story starting in verse 22, or creation narrative or retelling. The Lord created me. Okay, let's just set aside this male language of Lord and just say the divine being created me at the beginning of his work. That is wisdom, right? The first of its acts of long ago. Ages ago, I was set up at the first, before the beginning of the earth. When there were no depths, I was brought forth. When there were no springs abounding with water. Before the mountains had been shaped, before the hills, I was brought forth. When he had not yet made earth and fields or the world's first bits of soil. When he established the heavens, I was there. When he drew a circle on the face of the deep, when he made firm the skies above, when he established the fountains of the deep, when he assigned to the sea its limit, so that the waters might not transgress his command, when he marked out the foundations of the earth, I was beside him like a master worker. And I was daily his delight, rejoicing before him always, rejoicing in his inhabited world, and delighting in the human race. Wouldn't it be nice if people referenced that creation narrative, talking about wisdom as imbuing all of creation, and wisdom partnering with the divine in the creation and delighting in humankind instead of sort of this nasty thing that got twisted. It wasn't great to begin with, but it certainly got twisted in a negative way. That story in Genesis 2 and 3. Just saying. Now let's go read the Proverbs 31 woman story, and then we'll wrap up for today. Thank you so much for sticking it out. Those of you who are able to, who want to and able to, I appreciate you being here. Learning Greek, I'll have to say, but scooting back to Johnny Houston there, yeah, I certainly enjoyed learning the languages, but yeah, it's fun. It's fun to learn languages, and it's also fun to be able to look at some of these things for yourself and have some sort of basic concept. Oh my gosh, you guys are funny. Okay. All right. So here's the thing. Oh dear. The issue of the Proverbs 31 woman starts, most people think starts in verse 10 of chapter 31. I think the opening of chapter 31 is also important because they both come under this heading of the words of King Lemuel, an oracle that his mother taught him. Okay. Many women have perpetuated patriarchal ideas and standards, so she doesn't get a pass for like, oh, well, if his mother taught him. No. Okay, so there's that. The other is, it's interesting that this part isn't taken into consideration when the rest of Proverbs 31 is. So I'm just going to read the first 9 verses and then we're going to set it aside, because this first part is advice or something to her son specifically. No, my son, no, son of my womb. No, son of my vows, do not give your strength to women, your ways to those who destroy kings. She's not a fan of women, apparently. It is not for kings, O Lemuel. It is not for kings to drink wine, or for rulers to desire strong drink, or else they will drink and forget what has been decreed and will pervert the rights of all the afflicted. And she's attributing that to women? Okay, well, there were some courtesans in their court who led some things astray, apparently. Give strong drink to one who is perishing, and wine to those in bitter distress. Let them drink and forget their poverty and remember their misery no more. I mean, there's something to that, I guess, right? Speak for those who cannot speak, for the rights of all the destitute. Speak out, judge righteously. Defend the rights of the poor and needy. Okay, so goodness, she landed in a great place, but what the fuck is she doing? Like saying that women are what lead you astray. Ugh. It's just kind of exhausting when you got a woman saying that about other women. You know what I'm saying? And it happens. It still happens. So All right. So here's the thing. I love that a friend of mine read this opening, "A capable wife who can find," as more of a complaint by a Jewish mother for her son. A capable wife who can find. You deserve the best. Does she exist? You know. Anyway, she is far more precious than jewels. A capable woman. I'm going to go back to that. My English says wife, and I think it should say woman. So the heart of her man, my English says husband, trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. There are so many things about this. I don't have time to critique them all. I just saw on Instagram. Sorry, my hair's getting all messed up. I just saw on Instagram, posted by Misrepresentation, MISS, representation. A meme of a guy kneeling saying, "Will you make my life abundant? Will you take on a great deal more responsibility while my life remains mostly the same?" Or something like that, like kneeling with his engagement ring, asking her to marry him. That kind of goes on in my mind through all of this. So, the heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. When is this ever said of a man about his woman? When is it ever said? What is said? Now, the thing is, when it comes to the man has to bring home the bacon and the woman is the kept person on a pedestal, that isn't fair to men either. That's very much unfair also, I think, right? And it's assumed throughout the entire Bible that men are going to have to take care of the women. So there is that, right? It is absolutely assumed that women are dependent upon men to survive, right? So all of that is problematic in my opinion. And while I also think it's lovely when you can say that your partner trusts you, I think that's a really beautiful thing, regardless of gender, right? And that you make each other better. It's verse 12. She does him good and not harm all the days of her life, right? Like we can probably all know examples when a partner did harm intentionally to, like for whatever reasons that are happening, right? So there's an element here that is good. I'm trying to highlight that. And then there's an element of this that she is the woman who's described is wealthy, okay? Also cannot physically maintain what's being described for a long period of time because of what's being described. It is too much for one person, okay? So for instance, she seeks wool and flax and works with willing hands. I have never enjoyed anything like that. And I tried a bunch of it when I was a kid. I just didn't want to do any of it. And there were all these women around me who just couldn't get enough of it. I'm like, and I felt like there was something wrong with me. She is like the ships of the merchant. She brings her food from far away. Well, that actually just describes a woman who has some really interesting business connections and who knows, like who has spent time in town and knows the merchants who come and go. Like that's really kind of an interesting woman, right? She rises while it is still night and provides food for her household and tasks for her servant girl, for her enslaved women. So she's getting up before dawn and she's going to bed after nightfall. That is a routine you cannot sustain for long without ending up in the hospital due to exhaustion. Okay. She considers a field and buys it. With the fruit of her hands, she plants a vineyard. That's lovely, right? My podcasting partner really likes that verse. She considers a field and buys it, right? Well, that means she has her own business. Has her own money. She's smart. She's watching the real estate, developments, and she's watching things, and she knows where to. Like that's a lovely thing to say about a human, that they're interesting and clever and alert and paying attention and making their own money, right? She girds herself with strength and makes her arms strong. This is a very good idea, by the way. It's just a good idea. She perceives that her merchandise is profitable. Her lamp does not go out at night. Okay, again, that's an issue of, I think that's more an issue of wealth than anything. She puts her hand to the distaff and her hands hold the spindle. Again, not my cup of tea. Don't make me feel guilty for it, right? She opens her hand to the poor and reaches out her hands to the needy. Um, all great things, but also, can we just address the issue of poverty instead? I don't know. That's just me. She's not afraid for her household when it snows, and all her household are clothed in crimson. Again, this is a woman of privilege, and I'm happy for her. Can we just leave it at that? She makes herself coverings. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Again, privilege and wealth. Her husband is known in the city gates, taking his seat among the elders of the land. Right. Okay. Again, well-known people tend to be people of some means. I'm just going to say it, right? She makes linen garments and sells them. Etsy, thank you, Etsy. Okay. She supplies the merchant with sashes. So she's clever and she's good with people, right? She has some good business relations, right? Like, lots of things to like here. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. Ah, how lovely is that, right? She looks well to the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Well, I don't know about you, but there's plenty of research out there that says a little bit of idleness every now and then helps us sharpen the sword for doing the work that we're trying to do. So don't be down on idleness entirely. Thank you very much. I mean, who doesn't like Wordle at some point in the day in the midst of your work? It's just helpful, or spelling bee, or whatever. Crosswords. It's helpful. Her children rise up and call her happy. Her husband too, and he praises her. So her man too, and praises her. He quotes, "Many women have done excellently, but you surpass them all." What about the women who don't? What about the women who just, they're happy and they get things done, but they're not out trying to surpass anyone? Why does it have to be that? Why does it have to be surpassing and right? Like competitiveness of being a woman. Like, I've seen that play out. I'm sure some of you too have as well, right? When you have women who are trying to out-woman each other, out Proverbs 31 each other. Oh, it's just silly, right? Can't we just be content to be who we are and have a life of happiness, which can be hard enough to find in and of itself, right? Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain. Charm is deceitful. Is it? Is it though? Because charm depends, doesn't it, on how you use it? Charm can smooth a difficult situation. It can help opposing sides or multiple voices listen to each other. I don't think charm is necessarily deceptive, or do you know what I'm saying? Or deceitful. I don't agree with that. And I find that really frustrating. I'll just leave it at that. And beauty is vain. Maybe. Beauty is also socially determined and constructed. What is beautiful in our culture might be considered ridiculously underfed in another, or, or some people find smooth and round very beautiful, and some people find more angular features more beautiful. So, and that's all in one culture. So beauty, what is it? What is it really trying to say, right? Someone who is always trying to see themselves in the mirror is a vain person who needs to get back to work. Maybe that's what they're trying to say, but I don't know that seeking beauty for any human, male, female, and non-binary, right? I don't like what this does. And I say this as a person who used to sing that song like a good bit when I was in a conservative evangelical world, right? Charm is deceitful, and beauty is vain. But a woman who loves the Lord is to be praised. A woman who loves the Lord, right? Like, and this says fears the Lord again. So give her a share in the fruit of her hands, and let her works praise her in the city gates. I mean, that's such an interesting counter to this issue, though. A person can be beautiful and also productive and useful and interesting and have things to provide. And how many beautiful people, male or female or non-binary, have been undermined in their productivity or what they're offering because they are what is culturally determined to be beautiful, right? Uh, it's very interesting, actually, that conservative people would like to are more are quicker or have an issue with beauty or will use beauty as a way to undermine a woman, as if they can't also have brains and what is considered attractive. Anyway, I do think that there are elements throughout the Proverbs that are that can be useful. And my problem is that, again, they are intertwined so often with dualistic thought, essentialist thought, and are connected to fearing the Lord. And so that's where my hang up is when it comes to this. I do try to find something positive in these passages, in these things that people turn to, but it's very hard for me because they're so intertwined with this backsided issue. So we could have aliens. Knowledge is I think Bob Marley is having fun here today, and I've missed out on some fun play here. Yeah, exactly. She has her own Etsy. That's what I'm saying. The Proverbs 31 woman has her own Etsy. Yes. So that is what I have to say. I'm sure there are other things I've left out, but I know that seeking to meet all of these standards will land you in a pile of exhaustion. That's for sure. And it is also very hetero-focused and minded, and of course we should expect that, but that is also part of the struggle for me with scriptures, is how often we are only seeing, right, hetero couples. That is why chapter 10 of my book is titled Only Heteros? ? Because yes, we do only see heteros in a married relationship, and that is part of why many faithful Jews and Christians today cannot get beyond only embracing a hetero framework for marriages or for what is allowable in terms of sex. So these things are all intertwined, right? I went kind of long today. Thank you if you're still here or were able to be here and wanted to be here. I appreciate that very much. Thanks for that. And if you're watching this, later, thank you for that. Thanks for telling your friends about me. Thank you for liking videos and shorts and things that you do like, and telling your friend about a video or two. All of the different ways that you can support me, people are doing, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate those who are my patrons. I need to reach out and give them some love. Those of you who are, I appreciate you. And maybe I saw someone running the names or the handles of the people who are patrons. Is that awkward or is that positive? I don't quite know, because I appreciate people, but I'm also, I don't know if that's weird. I don't know. I want some feedback on that. Yes, Farsight is referring to Enheduanna in the comments here, right here at the very end of our time. So, and I'm going to give someone who knows about Enheduanna some time and some love, because yes, I have read her writings, and I am drawing a blank right now on any of the specific content, but yes, Enheduanna. Okay. Transformed Wife. Karen, I've actually reached out to her, just so you know. I've reached out to Transformed Wife. That's very interesting. She would consider herself this ideal, but I wouldn't describe her as happy. She's bitter, hostile, power-starved. Oh. Well, maybe if it is the same woman, that's why she doesn't even give me the time of day. Thank you. Hymns to Inanna. That's right. Thank you very much for that. Okay. Thank you for all the many ways you support me. And let me just, I did not list it here. I'm going to do a quick list of where the book is, because I just noticed that people who pre-order the book only pay $1 for shipping. What? So friends and family 30. So if you are interested in the book that I just released called Marriage in the Bible, um, Marriage in the Bible, what do the texts say? If you go to the website and use that 30% discount, and shipping's only $1. That might change at some point soon. They say that the book isn't available until the 15th of this month. And that was determined back in June, and so they just didn't feel like they could change it once it was actually available on the date that we said it would originally be. Throwing someone at the publisher under the bus here. Anyway, so I think maybe for a couple more days you can still get shipping for $1. That's my thought. So anyway, thank you. Thanks for being here. I will be back on Thursday. I have it up already. I can't remember. Song of Solomon. Oh yeah, Song of Solomon. We're going to talk about some refreshing passages. How about that? Even if it's imagery you wouldn't normally use to describe your lover or beloved, we're going to talk about it because it's kind of fun. So I will, thanks for being here. And there's one more comment that I didn't see. Yes. See you all soon.